Welcome aboard, applicants. All right, this is part 2 of our July 2012 question number 2. Let's start into our calls as we do with all of our essays. Is Wendy's interest in the family home subject to damages recovered for injuries to the pedestrian? Discuss, answer according to California law. 2. Is Wendy's interest in the family home subject to payment of Hal's legal fees? Discuss, answer according to California law. And 3, what, if any, ethical violations has lawyer committed? Discuss, answer according to California and ABA authorities. You probably have already guessed what we need to do right now. That's exactly right. We need to start addressing those calls. So we're going to say Wendy's interest in the family home, or I should say, is Wendy's interest, there you go, is Wendy's interest in the family home subject to damages recovered for injuries to the pedestrian? Question mark. Number 2, is Wendy's interest in the family home subject to payment of Hal's legal fees? 3, what ethical violations has lawyer committed? Okay, excellent. We'll go through here, and okay, right there. Now, since we know our area of law, we're just going to throw down our community property shopping list. Repeat that for the one underneath it as well. And then we're going to throw down our, since we know that this is most likely professional responsibility, we're going to throw down our professional responsibility shopping list. Alrighty, let's come back up here and read now. Wendy and Hal are married and live in California. A year ago, Wendy told Hal that she would not tolerate his drinking any longer. She insisted that he move out of the family home and not return until he completed an alcohol treatment program. He moved out but did not obtain treatment. Last month, Hal went on a drinking spree, started driving, and struck a pedestrian. When Wendy learned of the accident, she told Hal that she wanted a divorce. Hal has consulted a lawyer about defending him in a civil action filed by the pedestrian. He is currently unemployed. His only asset is his interest in the family home, which he and Wendy purchased during their marriage. Lawyer offered to represent Hal if Hal were to give him a promissory note secured by a lien on the family home for his fees. Hal immediately accepted. At this point, we need to source, because the first 2 calls, as you see, is about the family home. So we need to source that family home. Is that family home separate property or community property? Well, we got to take a look here. The facts say that it was what? It was his only asset was his family home, which he and Wendy purchased during their marriage. So I want to make sure that we bring these facts down here, copy down here, and we're going to bring this for source, the family home. We're going to source this as community property, and I'll show you why here. Because the facts state what? Right here. We're going to post the facts in here, that his only asset is his interest in the family home, which he and Wendy purchased during their marriage. So that's automatically aspect concerning community property to start out with. So, alrighty. Now, we're going to take care of that. As we use a fact, we highlight it and then keep moving. Okay. Here we go. Excellent. Okay. Now, Wendy and Hal are married and live in California. So we're just going to take a quick note to talk about that real quick. We got valid marriage in California. We're just going to throw that fact in here so that we're okay. Down here, right here. Okay. Now make sure too, as we're going through, we're highlighting facts as our headers as we bring them up, okay? Because we're going to be outlining as we go. Now, underneath, okay, we want to make sure too that as we use a fact, we highlight it. Okay, I think we already know that. And this also prompted me to remember to to talk about at the very first of these. We're going to talk that California is a community property state. Okay. And okay, we're going to throw down our little list here. California is a community property state. All property acquired during the marriage is considered all property acquired during the marriage through skill, effort, and time of either spouse is community property. All property acquired, number one, before or after legal separation. Two, through gift, bequest, device, or descent, and all rents, issues, and profits from separate property is considered separate property. Okay, we got that out. Now, I'm going to make sure we're going to point out to our reader that the source community property we source the community property, excuse me, let me rephrase that again. We source the family home as community property because it was acquired during the marriage. We talk about the valid marriage in California. We could actually also bring this up here, but I would just quick little discussion down there about the valid marriage. Remember, it's not major, it's only minor. Come down now. We're going to talk about the community responsibility for the debts of one spouse. Now, make sure we got to highlight that too, or make sure to underline that. Okay. We're also going to talk about the priority, not property, excuse me, priority of payment. And then I'm going to come down and there's going to be a reimbursement to the community. And then there'll be a distribution. We're following our shopping list in terms of our facts, okay? Okay, now that we've dealt with this, we can get rid of somebody undo that one. Thank you. Oh, there we go. There we go. Remember too, as we're going through here, we're outlining as we go. Okay. Now, the interest in the family home subject to Hal's legal fees. This is where we're going to talk about fees. And we're going to talk about the equal management and control aspect. And then we're going to talk about the actual timing of the fees. Okay. And then we're going to talk about necessaries. Okay. And then, okay, so there we're going to talk about that. Make sure we highlight these. Okay, and then what ethical violations has lawyer committed? We're going to first talk about the fact of competency. Okay, and then we're going to come down and we're going to talk about the actual when lawyer obtained the property interest in the case. So obtaining property interest in outcome of case. Make sure we okay. Now, also we're going to talk about because that there is a obtaining the property interest, there would naturally be an entering into the business relations with the client issue. Or to say business transactions with clients. Thank you. Okay, now also want to talk about fees, and we already talked about that. So we've got everything taken care of here. So there's that. All right. Make sure to underline, and we're gonna start pulling some facts and putting it underneath here. Okay, and placing it with our appropriate rule elements and such. Okay, great. Okay, now make sure too that your calls to the questions have both the bold and the underline. Okay, and up here, right here. Oh, it's right there. Okay. Okay, now we already talked about the California's community property state. Okay, right here, underline. Okay, we already sourced it. The valid marriage aspect. Now, community responsibility for the debts. Let's come up here now and talk about that. A year ago, this is you would not tolerate. This is the aspect about she insisted that Hal get treatment for his alcohol problems, the alcohol treatment program, and this aspect here would go to whether right down here. I would have to say underneath here under necessaries. Okay, right there. Okay, where we talked about this, we highlight it. We move on. Last month, Hal went on a drinking spree. Okay, now and struck a pedestrian. This is when the tort liability of the spouse right here. Here we go. Now the question mark on this one is, was the community estate still in existence? In other words, was there had there been a legal separation? So that's what we're going to look at underneath that one. The priority of payment now, we're going to look at whether or not whether or not the activity that Hal was engaged in was for the benefit of the community. Now, this is the aspect, again, I would have to say no, obviously, clearly, because the drinking spree aspect, Hal went on a drinking spree, we can copy and paste this. This is not something that would benefit the community. So that would his separate property assets would be the one to be the first for payment of priority on that. Now remember though, he's currently unemployed, so that's also something we're going to take into consideration here. But remember now, the community will receive a reimbursement for any particular amount that they pay, not only for his treatment or at the time during the treatment, but also to the time of the amount that it would have to pay pedestrian because because Hal is unable to pay. Now then we also talk about the distribution of the assets. Okay, now so we're looking, okay, that's that. Now taking into consideration the fees aspect here, up here we're bringing down the fact that Hal consulted a lawyer in defending a civil action by the pedestrian. Okay, bringing that down, copy that into underneath the fees. Okay, right there. And then equal management control. This is the aspect about the community property estate is equally shared between both spouses. But remember, when one spouse, without the consent of the adversely affected spouse, gives property away, and this right here, lawyer offered to represent Hal if Hal were to give him a promissory security and lien on the family home for the fees. Got to take this fact here, that the other spouse, if it concerns real property, could put that particular real property aside up to a year. So I'm going to make sure we talk about that right up here. Okay. Now, timing of the fees. This is also too about whether or not this is a contract. Remember, under contract liability, which is what Hal did here when he obtained legal representation from lawyer, that's at the time the contract is made. So it's at time contract is made, which would be, we got to ask ourselves here, if the contract was made during the existence of the community estate. And it looks like here the argument could be made that the community estate was still in existence, because now here's the thing though, there's argument that might defeat it, because up here when he learned of the action, she told him she wanted a divorce. So that, we want to make sure to bring that down here underneath the contract at the time of the contract liability is at the time the contract is made. Okay, so when he learned of the accident, she told Hal that she wanted a divorce. Was that before or after the time the contract was made? Presumably, it would be before. And if that's the case, then this is actually a separate property asset that he would have to pay. But that's the arguable point. Down here, though, the necessaries would be that the community is liable for paying for the other spouse's education, or excuse me, the food, shelter, and medical expenses. Now, also we're going to be talking about the going down now to the lawyer ethical violations, the competency. And California, we talked about this, that California competency is that it's learning learning and skill, and mental, emotional, physical condition necessary for the legal representation. And now there's ABA, the competency is all skill, knowledge, preparation, and thoroughness reasonably necessary for the representation. We got to ask ourselves here, did lawyer, when lawyer took on the representation of Hal's case, did she have that particular competency on board? Now, obtaining property interest in the outcome of the case. This is where we're going to say that a lawyer, under ABA, a lawyer cannot obtain an interest in the subject matter of the case other than for the contingency fee arrangements or for the attorney's lien. Okay. Now, under California, though, attorney's liens are impermissible. And if that's the case, then under ABA, the argument would be made that lawyer was obtaining an arrangement, a financial arrangement for fees for the repayment. However, under California, the violation would have occurred because attorneys' liens are impermissible. So under ABA, it's possible, but under California, it's definitely a violation. Now, on entering into the business transaction, which is what we're talking about in terms of the family home, an attorney can enter into a business transaction with a client if, number one, terms are fair and reasonable, 2, the terms are communicated to the client in an understandable manner, and 3, the client is advised that they should get independent counsel before entering into the transaction, and number 4, the client consents. Because nowhere in here in our facts did it say that lawyer, after he offered representation, did he or she have not only consult with Hal to get independent representation, but to get Hal's consent, okay, or Wendy's consent for that matter, because this is a family home. So let me highlight this, copy this, and bring this underneath this particular header, right down here. Okay, and I remember as we use a fact, we highlight it. Okay, so up here, I'm going to highlight this. We've talked about this. Okay, and okay, we talked about that. Okay, now make sure too that we talk about Hal going on the drinking spree and started driving and struck a pedestrian. I think we talked about that as not only being representation of his possible intent that the relationship not be continued, but also that the activity was not for the benefit of the community. Back though at lawyer and whether or not the lawyer committed any ethical violations. We got one last one, which is fees. Under California, remember the fees cannot be unconscionable. Now, under the ABA, a fee must be reasonable. Remember, though, there's a further. I should start out by saying under the ABA, a fee must be reasonable. Under California, fees can't be unconscionable, and then furthermore, in California, a fee agreement must be in writing unless it's less than $1,000 with a corporation or for a routine matter involving a prior client, okay, or an existing client. And so we don't see whether there was a writing between Hal and lawyer, and therefore, because we don't see that, there is possible violation under California. Even if the fees were reasonable under ABA, which is possible, California would represent the ethical violation that lawyer has committed. So, and then we want to make sure to throw in a conclusion here at the tail end of this. And I think we'll conclude on that for the time being. I thank you so much for tuning in, and uh, thank you for your patience with me, and God bless.